all point. How many of you realized that there was a Spanish presence, military presence in the southern Appalachians in the 1500s, the interior, not just on the coast, but in the interior? Great. Okay, so the years when Pardo was there were 1567, 1568, two different expeditions. And Pardo came after De Soto, who had been there in 1539, who actually in the Appalachians in 1540, and making Pardo the second European captain after De Soto to explore the interior of the southeast. Pardo traveled inland on foot from Santa Elena, where Fort San Juan was built, and that's now Paris Island on the South Carolina coast. First expedition being December 1566 through March 1567. Second expedition September through December 1567. So the historical background is, this is very early in the European contact, the exploration, invasion, expansion of Spanish La Florida. St. Augustine was founded in 1565, Santa Elena in April of 1566, and it was December 1st, 1566, as I said, that Pardo expedition left Santa Elena for the interior with 120 to 125 men. Very, very early. He spent 2 weeks, Pardo spent 2 weeks at Joara in January of 1567. He left 30 men there under a sergeant named Moyano. Then he went back, Pardo went back to Santa Elena on the coast. Pardo in the spring traveled up into the mountains, attacking several villages and actually getting into enough trouble there that word had to be sent back to Pardo at Santa Elena to come and help him. So in September of 1567, Pardo returned to Joara with over 100 men, maybe 120 again. He went up into the mountains, rescued Moyano at the town of Chiaja. Then he went back to Fort San Juan at Joara, leaving 31 men, and then traveled around and established 5 other forts, smaller than Fort San Juan. And then in November, Pardo was again there at Fort San Juan, and then he returned to Santa Elena. And then in May of 1568, the people at Santa Elena learned that Fort San Juan and the other forts that Pardo had established had all been destroyed. They had been burned down. There had been a revolt of the natives, and that all of the Spaniards there had been murdered and been killed, except for one, who was named Juan Martin. And he had escaped back to the coast with his native wife, possibly a Joara native. They were the ones who lived to tell the tale, and there's very little historic information that's known. So I'm happy to be in this Appalachian session, even though Fort San Juan is at the foot of the mountains. It's in the western Piedmont, actually not in the mountains, but it's not far. Here we're on the top, we're looking from Morganton, which is south of the side I'm working at, where Fort San Juan was built. And the site is actually down in the Catawba River Valley, in between where we're standing and Table Rock, which is to the north. And then we see the view from Table Rock. So we're very close to the mountains, actually, not in the mountains. We archaeologists have been expanding the information. The documentary information is very meager, but archaeological information now is greatly supplementing what we know about Pardo and Fort San Juan. So the story of the discovery of and the identification of the very site as the actual location of Pardo's fort is an interesting one. And basically there was a kid named Rob Beck, I used to call him Little Robbie Beck, whose aunt and uncle owned the very site. And so Rob Beck was interested in archaeology. He was one of those kids that grows up collecting arrowheads and other artifacts. And he went out to the field across the street from his aunt and uncle's house and collected the Native American artifacts and started finding Spanish olive jar sherds and pieces of metal and other things like that, and really thought that there was a very good chance that this was one of the 16th century Spanish sites, either from De Soto or Pardo. And he interested a graduate student, David Moore, who was then working on his dissertation at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And David Moore ended up doing his dissertation work at the Bear site, and except at the southern end of it. And here you see now Dr. Rob Beck of the University of Michigan and Dr. David Moore of Warren Wilson. However, more was excavated down here in the native village area, to the south of this bulldozed down mound, an eroded mound. And in the 1990s, late 1990s, they did some remote sensing at the north end of the site, and they discovered these 5 big, large, rectangular burnt buildings. And started, in 2001, they started controlled excavations of those, and are now convinced that this was the location of 16th century Fort San Juan. And probably also town visited by DeSoto called Joara, rather than Joara. And here you see some of the artifacts that are convincing to most of archaeologists. So Pardo's goals were to find a route to the silver mines in Zacatecas, northwest Mexico. They had no idea how wide the continent was at that point in time. They really thought it was going to be very close, that they could get a road through. And they thought Pardo leaving in December would be back by the following March. And he was supposed to establish friendly relations with the native leaders, convince them that they were subjects of the King of Spain, ask if they wanted to help make negotiations, and to give gifts in return for food. He was also supposed to look for precious metals and other valuable resources. So this is the source, this book by Charles Hudson is the source, or combines most of the documentary information that's available. There has been a short account that has been discovered and translated since then. But we know from the Pardo accounts that we have a good idea of the provisions and gifts that were carried on the expedition. We know that Pardo, many places where he went, he requested that houses be built by the natives and that stores of maize be provided exclusively for the use of the Spaniards. But we have no written descriptions of what the soldiers actually ate, and therefore we have to depend on the avoidances and the zooarchaeological information for the diet. So I'm doing paleoethnobotanical research for the Veracite project, the Explore and Joara project. And here you see our flotation machine, Shell Mounds Archaeological Project, had a machine on the shore of the creek, which is right at the edge of the site. And this is a little bit of information about our methods. So the questions are, what did Pardo's men eat? Where did plant foods come from? Are food preferences or avoidances manifested? Where were foods processed and prepared? And what were the social dynamics of provisioning and consumption? So we have some dramatic elements that are playing themselves out here in this very early and short window of opportunity. So we have active negotiation and temporary cooperation, and then we have resistance, and we have successful, if short-term, rejection of European expansion. So I've analyzed 60 samples so far, each one representing close to, well, most of them representing 10 liters of soil floated. And they come from these 4 contexts. Structures 1 and structures 5 were 2 of those 5 buildings, the 2 that had been excavated, that were cleaned out by the Indians after the massacre. The Spanish were lured outside, and then they might have been pretty clean already if they were keeping conforming to military standards, but not Indians did everything that they wanted of value, and then they burned down the buildings and they covered them over with earth, providing some protection from the elements, although there was also flooding after that, which buried them. And then other than the 2 structures, I've analyzed samples from pit features that are to the west of structure 5 here. And then this feature 112, which is a large feature that I'm especially interested in. Here you see a sort of a I think it's a cherry picker after we do a high photograph of the site showing structure 1 in the background, which is actually a little bit larger than structure 5. And then the western pits here, and then the feature 112 there before they were excavated. So feature 112 is this large pit, nearly 2 meters in diameter, and it contained the sherds of 2 large jars. They're actually more Cherokee style than the local Western Piedmont style of ceramics. And it is a nutshell. After analysis of the flotation samples, we know that it was a really large nutshell concentration. And below the the jars, there was a fill that was described as greasy by the excavators. And they were hoping it was some sort of bear grease, bear meat type of product, but I think it's actually hickory nut. And here's another picture of feature 112. And I have two of the types of seeds that came from there, but really it was mostly filled with nutshell. So results to date, no old world cultigens have been found and identified at Fort San Juan. And even though this would be very exciting, it's not really all that surprising given what we know about what the expedition carried. They did find old world cultigens at Santa Elena excavations that took place there and St. Augustine. But they do not seem to have made their way into the interior. And that's because there were no packed animals, not much food was carried to Joara from Santa Elena. In fact, Santa Elena itself was hard-pressed for food at the time, which is one of the reasons that Pardo seems to have been sent on this trek to Zacatecas. So in the way of food, the only provisions that are mentioned in the archival accounts are 793 pounds of biscuit, which we call hardtack, on the first expedition, 23, almost 24 liters of wine and 10 cheeses. And then on the second expedition, there was even less. There was more wine, but there was less. At this point in time, but even averaging out per man, it's not a lot of. It's very little food. Even on the first expedition, it averages out to less than 7 pounds of hardtack or biscuit per soldier. So they're really following the Spanish La Florida example, the pattern of relying upon the native people for food. And by the second expedition, the storehouses that Pardo had demanded had been built and there was maize available and negotiations had been made. And so they had reason to believe that they would eat fairly well. So the results, these are the percentage of samples in which we find maize and nut types. Maize and nuts and two different kinds of fruits are by far the most important types of food that come from the site. 100% ubiquity almost of maize and hickory, and high ubiquity of acorn except in structure 1. And then a lot of walnut in feature 112, but not much anywhere else, and then very low quantities of hazelnut. So to look at it another way, to look at the number of fragments per liter of soil floated, we can see that the western pits had higher densities of plant remains, of maize and nutshell, and that again you can see feature 112 as being the nutshell, especially hickory nut concentration that it is, with hickory and acorn and walnut showing up, especially in feature 112. And this might look like fairly low densities, and it really is relatively low densities, except for the pits in feature 112, which is chock-a-block full of nutshell. But when you add up all of the total number of fragments, we're getting a fair size archaeobotanical assemblage with nearly 2,500 hickory nutshell fragments and over 1,500 maize fragments and lesser amounts of the other major foods. I'm interested in the most common fruits, grape and maypops. Passiflora incarnata, maypops in the local passion flower. And here you see the ubiquities of these foods. Maypops is especially high. Passiflora incarnata was a favorite food of the Spaniards in some of the accounts for Central and South America. And they saw the symbolism, they named it passion flower after the numbers that they thought corresponded to the radial filaments of the crown of thorns, and the number of faithful disciples, the number of nails, and the number of wounds of crucifixion of Jesus. There were lower numbers of other kinds of fruits, persimmon, sumac, and rubus, and there were small amounts of squash and common beans. There were seeds of edible plants like portulaca, and there were 2 tobacco seeds, which is of interest since the records, archival records do not mention smoking. So the next thing I wanted to do was compare these figures to the amounts of the similar archaeobotanical assemblage from the native area that David Moore excavated and Christy Vermion analyzed following the earlier David Moore's dissertation excavation. And basically, it's not very different. The composition of the archaeobotanical assemblage from the native village area is similar in terms of high ubiquities of maize and hickory nut shells and acorns coming from most of the samples. Walnut was somewhat more ubiquitous in the native village, and there were more seeds. So looking at the intersite nut frequencies, we can see again hickory is dominating. Vermion quantified hers by weight rather than by count. I quantified mine both by weight and by count. But so you see basically the similar frequencies. And then one of the things archaeobotanists like to do is look at kernel to cupule ratios in order to try to determine whether or not we have the residue of consumption, which would be a high frequency of kernels relative to cob parts, or if it looks like we're dealing with processing, which would leave a higher percentage of the cob parts, the cupules, and the blooms. And here you see that the native village area had a very low kernel to cupule ratio, which probably indicates more processing. However, and feature 112, the nut processing pit has the highest proportion of kernels. And I think that this might represent a type of food called Kanechi, the Cherokee hickory nut soup called Kanechi in Cherokee, where maize hominy, where cracked corn and processed corn kernels are going to go into this product. And at the pits, the western pits, you have, and the structures especially, you have lower kernel to cupule ratios represented, which probably indicates less processing and more consumption. Okay, and then here you see the intersite comparisons with maypops and grapes, which you have the higher maypops density in the Fort area, which has led me at times to play around with the preference in terms of so somewhat higher proportion of grape, possibly even manufacturing stuff like fermented drink. These are the drinks that we skip over. So questions, what plants were they eating? Very varied diet, more so than indicated by the historic records, and which would lead you to believe that they were just subsisting on maize. Where did the plant foods come from? Local, not imported, which supports the hypothesis that they were relying upon the native people. I think that for the most part these were women. I think that these foods were harvested from their fields, that these were their crops, harvested also from groves and forest edges. Our food preferences or avoidances manifested, possibly, but it's something I'm still working on. Where were the foods processed? It looks to me like cooking was going on in the compound itself, and I think that native women were there helping to feed the men, especially when there were the lower numbers, the 30 or even down to 10 men that were left while Pardo and Leona were off on their forays. And then we're still dealing with the social dynamics of provisioning and consumption. So I'd just like you to notice that there are no women. Do you see any women in this picture? I don't see any women. But I think that they are the ones that are actually doing the provisioning, and that the decisions, the negotiations, and the day-to-day decisions that are going on. Even if originally it was El Capitan to El Capitan, but later on you have a lot of one-on-one interactions between women and soldiers, and I think that the women's voices probably resounded clearly in the decisions that were being made, including the final overthrow and destruction of the Thank you.